Okay, big things, there's two oils called parent essential oils. Body can't make them. So I like parent essential oils. So there's two types, parent omega-6, parent omega-3. Parent omega-6 is much more prevalent in nature. And if you look at the body, we need 11 times more parent omega-6 than parent omega-3. As everybody's seen, we're overdosed on omega-6, right? Have you all seen that? We're overdosed on adulterated omega-6. The reason it's adulterated is because the food processors need long shelf life. So you can't have cereal and bagels and pasta smelling like fish that's gone bad. Nobody buy it. So I understand why they do it. But because they do it, that means we have 100 trillion cells and there's a lipid bilayer. And half of that, it's a double membrane on every cell you have. Half of it is lipid, half of it's protein. So number one, there's virtually no structural carbohydrate in the cell membrane. So anybody saying you need carbs, carbs, carbs needs to learn some physiology. No, you don't. There's some carbs embedded, but it's not structurally made. It's half protein, half fat. Of that fat portion, a quarter to a third are the parent oils. So the parent oils are the brick and mortar of your body. If those aren't properly functioning, you get leaky cells. What does that do? Beta amyloid in the brain. It's just the cell falling apart and the protein's leaking out of it. That's why they try and fix it and it never gets fixed, because they're not fixing the cell. They're just trying to get rid of the amyloid after the fact. Leaky gut syndrome. Your whole entire digestive system is parent omega-6. Your entire skin, parent omega-6. There's no omega-3 in there. There's no parent omega-3. There's no DHA, EPA from fish oil. It's all omega-6. So anybody telling you you don't need this, they missed the one word, functional. You don't need adulterated, chemically processed. You need fully functional parent omega-6. So it's everything. In a cancer, carcinoma, it's all epithelial tissue. So all your organs have a lining of basically skin. I don't care what they call it, endothermal, it's epithelial skin, I call it skin. I'm an engineer, so I use the word skin. The doctors yell at me like, that's not the term. I said, I don't care what the term is, I care what it is. The structure is the same here as it is in the inner lining of your artery, by the way. So picture a straw. So this is called the intima on the outside. The space, the volume hole is called the lumen. All of the inside lining, parent omega-6. No omega-3, no fish oil, parent omega-6. So if that's defective, and it isn't everybody unless you're a raw foods vegan like Dr. Rowan, he co-authored the book PEO Solution with me, but he's 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, meaning you don't cook any food at all, so there's no processing. Everybody will have adulterated oils in them. Now, there's a great journal article that came out in 2017 that said anybody eating processed foods has chronic inflammation because the cells can sense it, that it's screwed up. How they do it, it's thermodynamic thing. There's some chairs in the front if you want to sit down. Come on, coming up here. It's a thermodynamic reason, but the cell system can sense it and it's staying critically inflamed. If you look at inflammation today, it's the cause of everything. Cancer is known as inflammation, a wound that doesn't heal. Heart disease, inflammation. Every disorder, autoimmune disease, inflammation. So everything has tied to it a huge inflammatory component. So I'm all about anti-inflammatory, and we'll talk about how this formulation helps that. But there's two different things. So back to the parents. The parents, parent omega-6, parent omega-3, brick and mortar of every one of the 100 trillion cells in the body. I don't care what the cell is, brain cell. Many of the organs have 4-to-1 in favor of parent omega-6. The muscles are about 6.5-to-1. The stored fat can be high as 20-to-1. So your body wants to store the parent omega-6. Now, if you take flax oil overdoses, fish oil overdoses, those oils displace what's supposed to be in there. You're screwing yourself up. It doesn't just get burned up. And that's what a lot of people think. I can take all these oils and no problem, it just gets burned up. The right formulation, even a big person, 240 pounds, 300 pounds, teaspoon a day. It's all they need. Little of this goes a long, long way. So you start with the parents, and from the parents come derivatives. That's GLA, AA, arachidonic acid, if you've heard that term, EPA, DHA. Those are the two omega-3 series side that's in fish oil. Fish oil has no parents, by the way. Fish itself does have parents, but fish oil is a highly processed food. Don't let anybody tell you it isn't. It's the wrong food physiologically because we're not living in frigid waters. We're not a fish. So what fish oil is for a fish is antifreeze. Nature only has two ways to go. You can do a long-chain fatty acid because they're hard to freeze, or you can do alcohol, but if it was alcohol, you'd have a drunk fish, so you can't do it. So nature doesn't have a choice. Now, when you look at us, what's our temp? Air, 74, 75, body, 98.6. When you look at EPA, DHA, they tell you in their advertising it stops rusting in the body. I saw that yesterday. And I'm talking to a doctor going, you are giving your patient unknowingly 100-fold super pharmacologic overdose because the brain only wants 7.2 milligrams a day and you're giving them 700 in the capsule. It's 100-fold too much. It goes bad at room temperature. Imagine how it's going bad at 98.6. So it's using up all your natural antioxidants to stop it, and now you have none left for the normal protection of what's supposed to be going on because you didn't know what the heck you were doing. As an engineer, the first thing I do is look at how much does the body use of something. So when I'm looking at these fish oil things, I have nothing against fish oil. It's just like how much the body uses a day. NIH, National Institutes of Health, and USDA, Department of Agriculture, did superb tests, radioisotope testing. It could go right where it is, 7.2 milligrams per day to a big brain person. So there's a curve. So on the end, it was like 4 to small kids, say. But a big person with a big brain, 7.2 milligrams. That's it. You go, okay, but doesn't your eye use some? Fine. Give another 7 milligrams for your eye. 7 and 7 is 14. Go ahead and double it. I'm a reasonable guy. 25 milligrams a day. How does that compare with what you're prescribing? 20 to 500 times too much. And this is a major problem. Fish oil is one of the biggest supplements in America, and the rest of the world follows what we do, right or wrong, so we're killing the world. So all this stuff is oxidizing in the brain. Any wonder why Alzheimer's, dementia is through the roof? Everybody's on fish oil. Maybe not everybody, but... And it doesn't even matter when it fails, because I always go into Whole Foods and ask them whenever I see articles about fish oil failure, they all fail. I say, a couple articles came out of fish oil failing. Are sales down at all? No. They're fine. So it's tragic, and even in the medical field, like if you heard me on Jeff's show, big article came out the end of last year on aspirin. It is not what you think it is. It will not help you one bit to stop a heart attack, and it won't even get approved as a drug today because of the excess bleeding problems. What aspirin does is it stops all EFA metabolism. So we started with the parents, they go to derivatives. This stops those derivatives. Derivatives are the control system. So you have a nice heating system here, but you have a thermostat. The thermostat doesn't work. I don't care if you have a great heater, great air conditioner, you're in trouble because there's nothing telling it what to do. These derivatives, there's technical terms, prostaglandins, leukotrienes. None of that matters. I don't care about the term. I care what it does. They are the controllers, and they don't even have to hit the bloodstream. They can go cell by cell. So very hard to measure. You pretty much have to do it indirectly, but they control everything. Another thing for you to know is the lipids, which these are fats, control the proteins. Everybody's always going, proteins, proteins, proteins. All the science, all the articles you read, this protein that protein this. None of them get lipids control the protein. If I look in a cell at the membrane and the nucleus, I can rip out the nucleus, the cell will live for months. I rip out the cell membrane, you got maybe a week. So the brain of the cell is that membrane, what goes in and out of it. And with full functionality, all the hormones, which are proteins, go in and out better. That's insulin. So you have insulin resistance, meaning the insulin doesn't work as well because you have a screwed up membrane. So all the hormones work better. Everything works better. So there's a big one. PGE1 stands for prostaglandin series 1, and it's number 1 because it's the most important. There's many others, lots of others, but series 1 is the most important. So there's a chain. So it starts, and they get bigger. So PEOs are 16-chain carbons. These other guys go 20, 22, 24. It doesn't matter except they get built up. And if there's an impairment at the first one, that's called technically the delta-6 desaturase, that breaks it apart and lets it get bigger. So if there's an impairment there all the way down, you've got a problem. And at the first stage with that delta-6, that goes directly to PGE1. So if there's an impairment there, you have a direct problem with not getting enough anti-inflammatory. And I did a paper, there's about 13 diseases that have in the literature major impairment of PGE1. And that is why they're always inflamed. That's why if you're diabetic, you have 2 to 4 times greater heart disease risk than a non-diabetic. And cancer, heart disease, fatty liver disease, diabetes, even if you're shooting insulin, you don't fix the problem. By the time you're full-blown diabetic, even a type 2, the impairment's done. I can't fix it. I can compensate for it. So the oils with the right formulation do a superb job of compensating. But if you can compensate well enough, you really don't need to fix it. You can work around it, and thank goodness in this case we can. So the biggest thing is those modulators, those control systems, have to function right. This is the biggest problem, and I said on the show, people don't suffer from a weak immune system. They suffer from an overly active immune system, and that's called an autoimmune disease. You've all heard it. You're attacking your own cells, which sounds insane. Why would my body attack itself? Because something's really screwed up. There's a system that's causing inflammation, but there's not a system that's saying, take that inflammation back. That's what PGE1 does. So if I go outside and I have pollen and I sneeze, that's inflammation. And a little of it's fine. If I take a knife and cut the heck out of myself, I'm going to bleed like heck. That's inflammation, and I need it because that tells the body, fix it. So you need inflammation in the beginning. The problem is it's supposed to go away pretty quick, not stay inflamed forever like if you're eating the processed foods or have a diabetic foot ulcer that doesn't heal. The inflammation is staying there, and that's the key. So there's 2 things, parents, derivatives. You need them both, because if I have a screwed up cell membrane, I'm going to have inflammation. So even though I'm compensating for that inflammation, you're having double the inflammation you should have. So if I'm compensating for it a lot, I haven't bought anything. So the goal is have as little inflammation as you should, which most of us should have very little, and then have a substance that if there is inflammation, it naturally takes care of it. Now, this is natural. This is not blocking or impeding anything. I specialize in optimizing all the systems. Drug companies, pharmaceutical companies, block and impede. Cholesterol reductase inhibitor, beta blocker. It's very easy to block things, but what do you get with that? Side effects. Because the minute you start blocking one thing, what have I screwed up over here that wanted this? Don't know, and this is why you get studies years later and black box warnings, which means very severe death problems, and drugs ripped off the market a couple years down the road when they start looking at this, because it's called unintended consequences. So I'm real good at looking 3 or 4 levels deep when you do something. What are the unintended consequences, or what are you screwing up that you didn't look at? First, do no harm. That's gone today. That was Hippocrates. It's supposed to be the biggest thing in the medical field. That's gone. You ask any doctor, the drug screws things up. I don't care. I'll give them another drug. I've talked to numerous ones. Hey, I got something that doesn't have side effects. So they don't even care. They're so used to giving one drug to treat another one's problems that they don't even care. So does everybody understand? Very fundamental. Got to fix the cell membrane so it's the brick and mortar. So this is standing up. If this is weak, the cell breaks, spits out itself. Leaky gut syndrome. You got all these people who can't digest anything. It's so simple. It's all parent omega-6. And the same thing with dementia and everything in the brain. It's also a cardiovascular disease. That's known too. It has nothing to do with this beta amyloid garbage. That's been changed. But the medical profession takes 20 years for anything to get out and actually change it. So even though all this stuff is known today, you think any doctors are going to prescribe less aspirin? Because that big, and it's a big article that came out. Let me show it to you. This was on the front page of the Houston Chronicle in Houston. I live in Houston. I mean, I just took out that. It went down. But front page article. Do you think any doctor is going to change their recommendation based on that? No. No. Just, that's nice. If you see something like this, you really ought to question, what are you doing? And you have every right. They work for you. That's what people don't understand. People work for you. You're paying them. You don't have to accept what you're being told, especially if you know better. Like my wife, they were saying cholesterol medication. I said, she's not going to be on any cholesterol medication. Well, her leg's swollen. She's in a wheelchair. She had a brain tumor, not cancer, but she was always breathing in this horrific hairspray since she was a kid with formaldehyde in it. Of course, it's off the market, but it's a neurotoxin. So here's your nose. Here's where the tumor was. So she has edema in the legs because the neurologic system's screwed up. So cardiologist is looking. She's got cloggage there. I said, I'm telling you right now, she's got no cloggage. I said, I really know the field of cardiology. Well, all I can tell you is if they're on a statin, they do way better than a non-statin. I said, you can do a test. I said, I'm not letting you do an invasive test, but you want to do ultrasound. Of course, she got it done. Perfect. Then I just had a 78-year-old patient who's got real problems. He had mold, Lyme disease, has genetic things, so he doesn't work the way a normal person works. So it's a very, very tough patient. He just got a scan in his legs. Top 1% they've ever seen. I don't care if it's a 10-year-old. Your 10-year-old doesn't go, but a 20, 25-year-old. They said, we never see anybody as good as you. What are you doing? It's the oils. So it would never help him as fully as it should have, but he had so many other problems. I said, cardiovascular-wise, I did the job because you would not be so good without these oils. So I know what they do, and it's all based on science. So if you have any heart disease risk, aspirin is not the answer. It completely ruins EFA metabolism in the prostaglandins because the oils come out of the cell membrane when there's a problem, and then it starts making the derivatives. And it impedes that. It stops it from happening. So aspirin is a very bad drug. It's called a NSAID. Not, what the hell does it stand for? It's a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. That's what it stands for. And then you have steroids to stop the whole thing. Steroids shut down all EFA metabolism. NSAIDs stop EFA metabolism from the cell membrane on. So the steroid's worse, and any doctor will tell you, you can't have anybody on a steroid forever, the patient will die. And they know that. They don't really know why, but they know it's horrible. And you want to take an aspirin now and then for a headache or something, no big deal. But you do not want to be taking it daily, and this article said the same thing. So that's the big thing with the oils. You need the right ratio, and the recommendations I do are very conservative, and we've been doing this for about 25 years, and they work. So the oils are number one. Number two thing is minerals. Minerals are just not in the soil because we don't use organic fertilizer. So you can use synthetic fertilizer, and the plant grows, but it doesn't have the minerals we need. The way humans get minerals is not from plants. It's from animals that ate the plants. So we cannot metabolize the mineral out of the cellulose. So all this Popeye stuff from eating spinach is absolute garbage. You're not going to get any iron out of the spinach. It's tied to the cellulose, and we're not a cow. We can't digest it. Humans don't break apart cellulose. So once again, we get misled. So the way humans get their minerals is from animal source protein. Now, it doesn't have to be a hunk of meat. It could be cottage cheese, but it has to be animal sourced. It could be regular cheese has some of this in there, but you're not going to get it from the plant itself. You'll get other stuff from a tomato or a cucumber. You know, there's things called phytochemicals, but they're way down. They're not as big as we're led to believe. But there's about 9 real important minerals, and some are tied to energy production, and they're just not in the food. So I specialize in what's not in the food anymore, the fuel, or what's adulterated. Whenever I look at stuff, because people send me from all over the world, look at this product, look at that product, it's miraculous, it's miraculous. I said, my first question is, why the hell do you need it? What is there in the body that's preventing it from being done? Now with the oils, the food processors ruin it, and it can't get fixed once it's in there. And by the way, oxidized cholesterol, if you're going, oh, these oils oxidize cholesterol because that's what's oxidizing. No, it's coming from ready-made ruin. So ruined oils, safflower oil, sunflower oil, olive oil, I don't care what the heck it is, they're already oxidized. So cholesterol to magnetize is called esterified to the cholesterol molecule. It's coming in ready-made. And this isn't just from me saying it, it's from Spyteller saying it, one of the top German biochemists in Germany. He was absolutely brilliant before he retired, and I talked to him. And it's all coming in from the food processors. The oils don't go bad in your body. The parent ones, now EPA, do go bad in the body. So they don't have to come in oxidized. But it's our temperature and the overdoses, they will get oxidized. But you don't have to worry about the parent ones. They're okay. So the minerals, what the heck are they even? They're coenzymes. So they're like a vitamin. And they work with the vitamins to make reactions go faster. That's what an enzyme does. It finds something temporarily, dumps it, and it keeps on, recycling itself. It allows things to go faster. So they're important. Then the last thing I care about is a detoxifier. The best thing I found is, what's a detoxifier? It's basically a blood purifier. It's things in the blood that shouldn't be there. You don't want metals, all chemicals, the liver purifies things. Where does it go? It goes through the blood. And you need to dump it if you can. Typically what happens, at least in the animals, toxins go in the fat. That's why if you're spending money on organic stuff, anything with fat, that's where you spend the money. So eggs, bacon, butter, cheese, cream, that's where you want to spend the money on organic. Now, meats, as long as you make them more well done, it denatures the steroids. They're mostly estrogen. That's why guys are effeminated, our sperm counts are blown away. This is why the women are all getting cancer. It's not because your body hates estrogen. It's because you're overdosing on it too from the animals. They feed them estrogenic compounds. And it goes into the fat. But if you cook it, and I like things more well done, and I send it to a lab, it denatures it, which means it makes it where it's non-functional, like 99%. But that depends if you like it well done or not. So biggest bang for the buck on organic is anything with fat in it. So the detoxifier helps you from the bloodstream you don't want. And something called Essiac was the best thing I found. It's an old Indian formulation. It's absolutely superb. They use it for anti-cancer. I read the pharmacologics on it. It should work extremely well for that too. Completely different than the oils. What oils do is talking anti-cancer. There's one cause of cancer. Everybody should be concerned about cancer. Lack of cellular oxygen, not in the bloodstream. Everybody, unless you have bad disease, in the bloodstream of 94 to 100. It's in the cell. Can't measure it unless you have a biopsy. So you're not going to go to a doctor's office and get cellular oxygen. Don't think you can, you're not. What you measure with the pulse oximeter is blood oxygen, which everybody is going to be just fine. It doesn't mean anything. This is why athletes have cancer. Everybody can have cancer. It doesn't matter. So you go, why the heck would there be low oxygen in a cell? Screwed up oils. The parent omega-6 oils, Dr. Campbell in '76 wrote a great paper on this with cystic fibrosis, which is a lung disease. It's genetic. Not a lot of people have it, so it's a rare thing, but they end up dying. and they can't breathe. So lack of oxygen in the cell membrane. So the cell membrane with the right oils can actually dissociate the oxygen just like hemoglobin in the bloodstream. Comes out of the membrane into the cell. So it doesn't just go in and out of the cell like they tell you through the bloodstream. A lot of it does, but there's extra. Cancer cannot duplicate in high oxygen. That was proven in 1954 and I think 1956 in America with brilliant experiments. Warburg was a German PhD, MD, absolute genius physiologist of the 20th century. Nobody touched him. Hitler loved him because he was working on cancer, and Hitler's mother died of cancer, so Hitler was petrified of cancer and would let Warburg do whatever the heck he wanted to. So all the Jews in America hated Warburg's guts, and they tried to discredit him, and they did. Everything the guy said was right. He was never proven wrong. He was meticulous, would do an experiment 10 times before he'd publish it, made all kinds of discoveries. There's the Warburg manometer for measuring pressures in the body that was just absolutely brilliant that he did, and they hated his guts. So they act like it doesn't work. Every cancer is hypoxic. It doesn't have oxygen in it. And these are cellular oxygenators with this EFA formulation. So people's energy goes up. It also makes the mitochondria better. So what's the mitochondria? That's the energy engines in the cell. So one cell can have up to 1,000 mitochondria. So there's actually more mitochondria than there are cells. There's more than 100 trillion, yeah, because you have 100 trillion cells, so multiply that by 100. You're talking enormous numbers, but they're real little. That's why you don't need much. So the inner membrane of that mitochondria is called cardiolipin. It's 100% parent omega-6. So if you're a diabetic living on processed garbage, like most of them do, and I'm living with a type 1, my wife's type 1, she eats too much garbage in spite of taking the oils and everything else. Doesn't matter if she has an appetite for it or not, she just does it. This gets in there. And it goes in as a percentage of how much junk you eat. So it's very important you take the oils if you're eating junk. You could even take more oils if you eat more junk, because Dr. Lanz did a great experiment in 1990, radioisotopes again, looking at it as a percentage. So the cell membrane has a genetic structure to it. It's supposed to be this. But if your diet going overboard, these extra oils have to go somewhere. They just don't get burned up. They go into the tissue in proportion. So anybody not taking these oils, I don't even know how they're alive. Typically, they're not in good shape. I don't care who it is. You talk to doctors, they have heart disease, they have cancer all the time, they have no energy. There's not one population that's in real good shape. When you talk to them and they tell you the truth, they may fake it while they're in front of you, but on their own, they're as big a mess as everybody else is. So it's just a tragic state of affairs. Even the kids today, I think your average kid has like 5 disorders by the time they're 15. It used to be nothing. You never used to have a kid with anything. Now, a kid with no disorder is the anomaly. Again, processed foods. It all goes back to this. These are fundamental with everything, and if this is screwed up, everything's going to be screwed up. So the detoxifier helps get rid of the junk you don't want. So 3 things, 2 parts, stuff I'm either not getting or is adulterated, so I fix that, give it the right fuel. 1 part junk I'm getting because there's food processing, preservatives, hormones, steroids, all kinds of junk in the foods that I'm stuck with. If I go to a restaurant, you don't know what the heck they're giving to you, and everybody does it. They have to do it. I don't even care if it's a good one. You're going to get the junk, and you don't want it. So you do those 3 things. This is good for 99.9% of everybody. There's nothing else you need. Vitamins, way overblown. I don't take any. They are in the food. You go, oh, there can't be enough. How do you know? Number 1, we recycle vitamin C. Anybody here know that? No. Why would you? We recycle it. We're not like the other animals that need it every day. Oh, we have a genetic defect. Like hell we do. We recycle it. They don't. We're more efficient. So this isn't for amateurs, and it just takes a pile of time. And don't think for a second I learned all this stuff linearly. So you learn this, and you come this, and you come this, and 20 years later you can connect the damn dots. But this took a long, and there's only 2 of us in the world that do this. Me and a guy in Toronto, Paul Beatty, that's it. which is unbelievable. Big Pharma doesn't even have people that know lipids like we do. I talked to a guy that was the head guy for deciding cardiovascular drugs from a big pharma company. I said, isn't there somebody like me in there? No. Well, don't they have lipids? Yeah, but that's bloodstream lipids. We measure cholesterol and we measure this. Isn't there anybody with physiologic lipids? No. Why is that? Because block and impede. Why would they even care? They can't block and impede it. You know, block and impeding is not going to help anything like wound healing. You're not going to get better wound healing by blocking and impeding. You need more blood flow. You need more oxygen. You need more skin tissue. You need more of everything, not less. So the drug companies, in fairness to them, have done a great job of blocking and impeding everything they can do. But you got those side effects. That's why I always see on TV, if you have tuberculosis, run like hell, because they get rid of your immune system. That's why your skin's better. Do you really want that? Is it really worth it? Half the time you listen to the disease or disorder, and then the side effects are worse than the disease or disorder. You can die, you can be this, you can be that. I'm looking at this. Yeah, we have more side effects too. If you come to our website, we have another 10. I'm going, how can anybody in their right mind take this? But they do. People are so desperate, they do. So I've given you a quick summary of three-part program that 99.9%, it's enough. Can you take other stuff? Sure. You want to waste money on CoQ10? You can. It's not going to hurt you. There's a pile of stuff that's not going to hurt you. It's just not going to help you. So I always tell people, if you think it's not doing something, stop taking it. And if you say, I think it helps, well, then it's doing nothing. I can tell you what this does, period. Period. And stop taking it, and you will see and feel the difference. Skin becomes just unbelievable. I mean, I'm a guy, and my skin beats 20-year-old girls because I have a secret. They don't, so they get mad. Whenever I'm out of town, I go, hey, let me do a test. You know, I touch right here because there's nothing on. Or fingernails like glass. Fingernails, epithelial tissue, too. So if your fingernails are like glass, the inside of your arteries are like glass. It's the same darn thing. So how is anything going to stick to an artery? And by the way, on those derivatives, PGE1's vasodilator, so you get more nutrients, you get more oxygen, and it's the anti-inflammatory too. Another one's called PGI2 that makes it where the platelet can't stick to the arterial wall. Can't stick, it just keeps going, and they don't stick to each other. So that's what you get. You get two, blood platelets or red blood cells that stick to each other. They can't. It fixes the charges on them. So it's like two magnets, two north poles. They stay apart, right? You can't push them together. That's the way your blood's supposed to be. But the charges get screwed up because the chemical structure of these oils is adulterated and stuff sticks together. That shouldn't be happening. In the 1900s, there was no cardiovascular disease. 5% of the population died. Oh, but they didn't track it back then. Are you so sure? They did track it back then because I saw the journals. They tracked it in 1900 in New York. And it was real easy to track. Heart disease, easy as heck to track, so is cancer. It's a big mess. A moron could tell it's cancer. So they did track this, and it is tracked, and I had my hands on the journal articles. Jesse Jones Library, Houston, Texas, at the time, 340,000 medical volumes. I had my hand on an 1860 Lancet, which is the world's premier medical journal. They actually had it in the stacks, and I touched it. So anybody saying they didn't look at this back then, really, you're so sure, because you're wrong. Stop making stuff up. It was tracked. It didn't exist. There was virtually no cancer. There was virtually no heart disease. And why do we live longer today? Are we really living that much longer today? In the older days, a lot of people died of the flu. A ton of people died under 20 years old. So it's called a conditional probability. The question to ask is, if you lived to 20 years old, what's the probability you'd live to 80 years old? And it was huge. So you go to an old cemetery, you'll see 70, 80, 85. They didn't die off. Now, it was tough back then. You could die of a gunshot wound. They didn't have the surgery. In the Civil War, the surgeons had nothing. It was horrible. If you ever saw the series Deadwood, that was about that time. And there was a doctor, he goes, I couldn't do anything. They had no surgery. They had no anesthetic. It was absolutely horrible. These poor guys would bleed and get infection to death. There's no supermarkets. We got all that now. Why aren't we living to 150? Because there's no good reason we shouldn't. Because of what they're doing to the food. And the air is ruined too with the chemicals in it, but it's more the food. Water's horrible. So they're poisoning us. So how long is the Ferrari going to run with contaminated gasoline? Not well, not well. So things are pretty simple. So I hope you'll really take a look at one of those books so you learn some science. I give you the actual science, but I also translate it because I want you seeing what the actual paper or medical textbook said. So you go, he's not making it up, because let me tell you, most of these authors make stuff up. They have a headline, and when you look at the actual article, the article never said it. And that's why I never publish quotes seeing where it came from. I spend a huge amount of time seeing the actual paper before I do it. And nobody else does because it's too much work. They just take it at face value. And like I said, most of them, it's not what the article said. So you'll see what the actual article said, what the textbook said, and what the physician should have known. The problem is they go through the textbook so fast, they're looking to pass a test, because I go through the same textbooks they do. But I have a year to do it, and I'm looking at different things. They're looking at it to pass the test. Because I've asked them, I said, why the heck don't you know this? You went through this book. Well, how long did it take you? I said, a year. Well, we had to do it in 90 days, and we're just doing it to pass a test. And okay, fair enough. And that's fair. So the physician's in a tough situation. They're under the gun. Everybody is sick as heck. You go into a cardiologist waiting room, it's just overflowed in spite of how great statins are supposed to be. I remember when statins, a colleague of mine went down to California, see a very good integrative MD, and we see his cardiologist, probably an associate professor at one of the big universities. Since statins, we just don't see heart disease, do we, doctor? And, he didn't know what to say, so he goes, yeah, and I'm looking at my colleague going, this guy's insane. Walk into a cardiologist's office, and it's overflowing. I don't care who the heck it is. It shows you how well statins work. 1% at best over 5 years. That means I take 100 people, the result over 5 years, maybe. That's 99% failure rate, by the way. Again, engineer, I look at failure rate. Make 100 iPhones, 99 blow up in your face, you got one. Brilliant. You'd be fired and thrown on the floor. Doctor goes, brilliant. I mean, the medical field, the bar is so low that anything they do, brilliant. I went to a cancer conference once, and they came in going, the biggest thing at the cancer conference this year was a week extended life. Bayer had something for a week. And they said, a week? It was all full of doctors, except for me, because I'm not one, but I was there. They go, a week? Yeah, that was the big news. A week. That's a forget outside of very limited things, childhood leukemia. That really has nothing to do with them. It's just because the cells grow so fast, they can use radiation and chemo and blow up everything, but the turnover rate's so fast. But they take credit for it. We have podiatrists I was looking at. Diabetic foot ulcers, it's a hole in your foot, okay? You know how they're measuring it? With a ruler. No, it's not a nice circle like this. It's an irregular mess. It's an ellipse, or it's it's not a circle. Nobody made a pie plate and stamped it out in your foot. It's just an open wound that's a mess. There's laser ways to measure it accurately. They don't do it. You know what the inaccuracy is when you take a ruler and go across? 40%. So what that's doing is it's giving them a 40% improvement because it's 40% bigger than it actually is. And they're taking credit for 40% healing. Your dog could get that result because it's 40% inaccurate day one. They don't even care. Actually, they don't want the laser. They'd rather get the credit. Think about it. You want to get 40% credit for doing nothing, or you want to be held accountable? I'll take the 40%. I couldn't do it, but I'm very different than most people. I don't know how they can, and they don't even care. So there's big problems in the medical field. I can't stress enough. You want to know this, you got to learn it on your own. 6 hours, 8 hours, you go through those books 3 times. Even the doctors do it. You go through the whole thing, beginning to end. I don't care what you understand, doesn't matter. Then you go through it again, and it'll go, oh, now I know what he is saying here. Then the third time, you're used to it, and it'll be, makes sense, got it. It's worth the 8 hours, because then you can never get fooled again. So that's, it's about 45 minutes, but that's a summary of what I wanted to tell you. Happy to answer any questions, and I'm obligated, if I don't know the answer, to say, I don't know. Don't accept some stupid answer from somebody. And a lot of people do, from doctors, and they feel obligated to give you an answer. You ask a question, you're paying them. They'll give you the stupidest answer in the world. Don't accept it. Just go, why don't you just tell me you don't know? That's okay. I have respect for someone that says they don't know. Nobody knows everything.